Have you ever been playing a game and gone, man, this sucks? Well, you're not alone. Welcome to my world, truly a place of unimaginable pain and terror. A place where I subject myself to the painstaking task of finishing average to below average video games. That's right, there have been a lot of different instances throughout my time gaming where I've been just slogging through a game, actively aware of the fact that I'm not really having any fun with it, and yet I still force myself to roll credits. But why do I subject myself to this? After all, if it's not fun, why bother? Well, that's actually a really good point, one that I definitely need to keep in mind more often when I'm playing. I don't really know if this is a common problem that people have when playing games, or if I'm just making it out to be more of a big deal than it actually is. But I do think that the answer to my question of why I even bother with games that I'm not really enjoying is a bit of a complicated one, at least for me personally. I'd say that the biggest reason I force myself through a game when I'm not really too into it is because I want to knock games off my backlog. But another reason that I feel is just as important as the backlog is that I want to feel like I've gotten my money's worth from the games that I play. If I end up dropping a game, I almost feel like it's an admission that I wasted my money, and I really don't like that feeling. I do think that feeling definitely fades with time though. Like, if I bought a game a really long time ago, haven't played it until now, and then ended up dropping it, the loss of money doesn't feel as bad, because I spent it so long ago, and I've likely made it back at this point. But if it's a game that I started playing right after I bought it, I'll probably end up pushing all the way through to the end, otherwise I'll really feel like I lit my money on fire. There are plenty of other smaller reasons that I'll play a game I'm not too crazy about to completion, and some that I think many other people might be able to relate to as well, so I'll be sure to hit them all, as well as some examples of games that I regrettably forced myself to beat, and even some games that I just couldn't reach the credits on. Like I said before, I'm really just curious to see if this is a problem that other people run into or not, so let me know if you can relate to this feeling. Or if I'm just crazy, let me know that too. So, like I just mentioned, one of my primary reasons for finishing almost all the games that I buy is to mark a game as completed on my backlog. Now, don't get me wrong, I actually love my backlog. Where a lot of people see an overwhelming mountain of games that starts to feel like a chore to get through, I see a collection of games that are just waiting for the right moment to be played. I'm under no illusion that I'll ever realistically complete my entire backlog, and I don't really care if I do, but I still like to chip away at it wherever I can, because I am genuinely interested in playing the games on that list. But if I really just want to knock games off the backlog, couldn't I just drop the games too? After all, that is still checking something off the list, even if I didn't play it all the way through. That way, I'm at least not wasting my time on a game that I'm not having a really good time with. I would say that I try to play my games intentionally, and I do think I've gotten a bit better at choosing what games are and aren't worth my time, but there's still room for improvement. I need to be able to recognize when I'm not having that much fun with a game, and just be okay with putting it down and not picking it back up again. But I gotta be honest, even if I'm not having fun, leaving a game unfinished, it just feels wrong. Leaving a game unfinished just kinda pokes at me, you know? It feels like an itch that I need to scratch, and the only way to scratch it is by jumping back in for another 30 hours of Kingdom Hearts. No. It sounds stupid, but leaving games unfinished just really doesn't sit right with me, and I'll generally only do it if I'm having an absolutely miserable time with one, and sometimes not even then. An example that always comes to mind when I think about this is my playthrough of Assassin's Creed Odyssey. I'm admittedly not a super big Assassin's Creed guy, especially these days, but I always liked the idea of it. I played a bit of Assassin's Creed 3 when I was young, and I loved that, but I think the modern games are pretty terrible. I ended up dropping Origins pretty early on, so Odyssey is the only one of the modern Assassin's Creed titles that I've actually beaten. I think Assassin's Creed Odyssey is a truly awful game, and the entire time I was playing it, all I could keep thinking about was how much of a slog it was. I was actively aware of the fact that I was having no fun at all with the game, and yet I stuck with it until the very end. The game is just so tedious. Combat feels flat out bad. It's floaty, unresponsive, and boring, and that's paired with enemies that are super spongy, requiring an absurd amount of attacks to defeat. Exploration is unrewarding, the story and quests are boring, the game's RPG mechanics feel tacked on and forced, and to top it all off, character progression moves at a snail's pace, since the game is fundamentally designed to incentivize the player to just buy XP microtransactions out of frustration. It's a bad game. But then, why did I go out of my way to beat it? Well, little known fact about me, I am Greek. So even though I've never been a particularly big Assassin's Creed fan, I was drawn to Odyssey because I thought it would be fun to explore a bit of my culture and maybe even some of its mythology through a video game. That's literally the only reason that I trudged through that sorry excuse for a game. If only I had known about better Greek-based games back then.
Is this how you face me, coward?
But thank God I didn't make the same mistake when playing Immortals Phoenix Rising. At least I dropped that when I realized it really was just a cheap imitation of Breath of the Wild with Assassin's Creed style combat and a Greek coat of paint. So that's some progress, I suppose. But something else that always tugs at the back of my mind when thinking about dropping a game is the thought that if I don't play a game all the way to the end, I might not truly be justified in forming a conclusive opinion on it. Even if I do end up hating a game, I really try my best to give every game I play a fair chance. I never go into a game that I'm actually interested in playing wanting to dislike it. But there are so many people out there that believe that you can't truly form an opinion on a piece of media unless you've experienced it yourself from beginning to end. And to a certain extent, I kind of agree with that sentiment. Although not entirely, I do get where people who say that you have to beat a game to have a meaningful opinion on it are coming from. The very first video I made on this channel was about how let down I was by Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, and I specifically mentioned in that video that I hadn't come anywhere close to actually beating those games at all. And yet I still went out of my way to make a 30+ minute video about how much I hated those games. Although I stood by my thoughts on Scarlet and Violet as I made that video, and I still do today, I can't help but feel like maybe those feelings aren't completely justified since I haven't experienced the entirety of those games. And maybe that somehow ties back into the feeling of not wanting to admit that I've wasted my money on a game, but I've come to realize that wasting my time on a game might be an even worse price to pay. After I dropped Scarlet and Violet, I was done for good, and even though I have that somewhat guilty feeling of incompleteness when I think about those games, I've never once really thought about going back to finish them. I know how I feel about those games, I know how much I hate them, and yet the discomfort in the back of my mind is always going to pop up whenever I think about them. I think that feeling is a bit of the reason as to why I ended up sticking with Pokemon Legends ZA until rolling credits. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't think Legends ZA is anywhere near as bad as Scarlet and Violet, but I don't think it's a particularly good game either. I actually really enjoyed the beginning of my time with the game, but after a while I got super bored, and completing it just kind of felt like a chore more than anything else. I think the change in battle format from turn-based to cooldown-based real-time combat is really ambitious. It shows a real willingness to change instead of just doing the same tried-and-true formula over and over again, but it isn't as much of a game changer as it sounds like it would be on paper. You have to pay more attention to the positioning of your Pokemon for sure, and certain moves are more useful and effective in this battle format than they were originally, but at the end of the day, the real-time battles play out very similarly to classic turn-based Pokemon battles. But that slight feeling I have of the new battle mechanics falling a bit flat isn't what makes me have mixed opinions on ZA, but it's actually many of the other aspects of the game. I think the feature that works against Legends ZA the most is the setting of Lumiose City itself. I was never against the idea of the entire game taking place within one city from the start. I was actually intrigued to see how the developers would pull off making one dense city feel truly populated and lively as opposed to making an entire expansive region. But it unfortunately wasn't executed very well at all. Visually, the city is very bland. There are flat, copy and pasted textures spread all throughout Lumiose, and after a while of wandering around, I realized there isn't really anything visually distinct about any area of the city compared to another. This led to everything looking pretty much exactly the same, and it made exploration feel really boring after a while. The overall progression structure of the game is also pretty bland too. It all just feels very repetitive. But I'm not going to act like the game is completely irredeemable or anything like that. Like I said, I did have some fun with it, especially at the beginning. There are a lot of fun and interesting new ideas here. Also, a lot of the new Mega Evolution designs are really cool looking, even if there are a few catastrophic misses in there as well. It's not a terrible game, but nowhere near one of the best either. But with all that said, this raises a question. Are my opinions on Pokemon Legends ZA more valid than the feelings I have towards Pokemon Scarlet and Violet? When I think about it logically, I'd probably say yes, but I feel like there's honestly no definitive answer to this problem. If you're just playing for fun, there's no reason to make yourself play a game that you genuinely can't stand in order to justify your negative opinions on it. That doesn't accomplish anything. So at the end of the day, I think I also need to get better at realizing that it is okay to form your own opinion on a game even if you don't finish it for yourself. That line of thinking might make it easier to drop a game that you're not having that much fun with. But a situation where I would actually disagree with the statement I just made would be when it comes to official reviews of games. I think there's a big difference between sharing your own personal thoughts on a game as opposed to someone publishing something that they consider to be an actual review of a game as both a piece of art and as a product. And whether that be by a professional game journalist reviewing for a major publication, or by a YouTuber who actively refers to themselves as a reviewer, the same rule applies. The very act of writing a review comes with it a certain responsibility for the reviewer to have played through the game from beginning to end. This is in order to form a conclusive opinion that's as close to being an objective evaluation of a game as it possibly can be. And obviously, art in and of itself is subjective, and no two reviewers are going to have the same exact things to say about a specific work of art as one another. But when a game's quality, or lack thereof, truly shines through, the general sentiments surrounding it are likely to be pretty similar between reviewers. And I don't think that every reviewer has to like 100% a game to have a valid opinion on it or anything like that, but at least make it to the end of the story. A review is a professional analysis of a game, and thus, it should encapsulate the game as a whole, so a definitive review can't be written if the reviewer decides 5 hours into a 30-hour game that they're just going to drop it because they don't like it. At least, that's how I feel about reviews anyway. Now that I've given a couple examples, it may be easy to see that sometimes I might be playing certain games for the wrong reasons. I'm not one of those people that thinks there's an absolute right way to play any games, and I truly think that if you're having fun, that's what matters most. But some of the reasons that get me through a handful of the games I play just don't feel right for me personally. Definitely play the way you want, but maybe try and take notice of your habits every now and then, and think about whether or not you're actually having fun with what you play. I've been primarily talking about single-player games up until this point, because that's pretty much all I play these days, but I think that continuously coming back to play a game you're not having fun with is an even more prevalent issue to run into with multiplayer games, especially when you're hopping on the latest live service dog shit. Anyone down for some High Guard? Oh. But in all seriousness, it's obviously cool if you enjoy those kinds of multiplayer-centric games, they're just not my thing. Even so, it's no secret that live service games employ a lot of underhanded tactics to get players to continuously log in day after day, trapping them in a never-ending cycle of gameplay. I think, like anything, a game can be stripped of both its fun factor and its entire meaning when it's presented as something that's never meant to end. Too much of a good thing turns bad and all that. If you're so focused on just grinding the battle pass before the season ends, or unlocking, or sometimes even paying for, the newest, coolest skin available, you might get lost in that FOMO-driven system and forget to actually have fun with the game itself. I've heard plenty of stories on the internet throughout the years of people getting trapped in toxic relationships, for lack of a better term, with these live service games that they're playing. Always chasing the next reward, not necessarily because they find the game fun, but just because they've been locked in for so long that it's basically habit at this point to continue playing. And this isn't to say that I think most of the people playing these games don't actually enjoy them or anything. Like I said, as long as you're having fun, that's all that matters. But these are patterns that I'm acutely aware of when I overhear conversations about many of these live service games. And listen, I'm no stranger to falling victim to this myself. I was once locked in a toxic cycle with a little-known game. I don't know, maybe you've heard of it. Dragon Ball Z Dokkan Battle? This is a mobile game, and a gacha game on top of that. So the boring gameplay and predatory monetization practices are in full effect here. And I played this game for like 8 years. The gameplay isn't even good, it's just tapping circles. Look, I have no excuse. Do I like this game? No. But do I like Goku? Well, yeah. And this game has Goku. I guess that was enough reason for me to stick around for nearly a decade, huh? It really is that easy. So yeah, I truly do know firsthand what it's like to get trapped by a shitty game just because it has one or two things that are cool about it. Luckily, there was hope for me, and with the support of my friends, I was eventually able to escape the game and delete Dokkan Battle from my phone, hopefully forever. Well, unless there's an especially cool new Goku Vegeta unit that comes out in the future. As you can see, I still totally struggle with continuing to play games even when I don't like them, and I really need to start taking my own advice about this kind of shit. I've made some progress here and there when it comes to this problem, and I'm definitely more open to dropping games if I'm aware that I'm really not having a good time, but there are still plenty of other games that I'll choose to just power through on. In those scenarios, completing a game can often feel more like work than play. That's why I think it's important for myself and others who might encounter this issue to pause for a minute and really evaluate whether or not they're actually having fun with a game, or if they're just trying to finish it to fulfill some kind of self-imposed obligation, such as wanting to cross it off the backlog or ensure that their money was well spent. Trust me, I get it. I've been there. Like I said, I'm still not consistent enough with actually putting these words into practice. Just recently I made myself finish a game I didn't really like too much called Unsighted, just so I could knock it off the backlog and say that I gave it a fair chance. Thankfully that one was short and only took a day to beat. And I do think that there's something very positive about wanting to give a game a fair chance and really make sure that you're evaluating it properly. But it's also important to keep in mind that you never have to finish a game. It can sometimes feel bad or even wrong to not agree with the general sentiments and opinions surrounding certain games, especially ones that have mainly favorable things said about them. You might really want to like a specific game that you're playing, but for whatever reason, it just might not click with you. And that's okay. It's okay to drop a game, or maybe even just shelve it for now and come back to it later. Sometimes leaving a game on the back burner until the time that you're in the right headspace for it can make you appreciate it on a level that you wouldn't have noticed previously. But whatever the case may be, remember to try and have as much fun as you can when you're playing your games, because at the end of the day, that'll always be what's most important when you're engaging with your hobbies. But I really am curious, is this a problem that many of you out there also run into, or is it mainly a me thing? I find that sometimes I might think too hard about video games, and maybe I end up optimizing the fun out of my experiences from time to time. So that's why I'd love to hear about what you think of the topic as well. If you have anything you'd like to add to the conversation, please let me know. I'm super interested to hear about your own experiences with this situation as well. It might be niche, or it could be much more common than I initially thought, so please tell me what you think. And as always, thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed.